everybody that on the two people that are here, and maybe the others that have come, Chad and Jan, are on their way, that in every budget you're going to see a 1% merit pay raise, and we will be asking every committee, every agency that comes up to tell us how they plan to use that 1%. That'll be a standard question. The next adjustment you'll see on everybody's tracking sheet is for the employees' retirement system. The next thing that's common upon everybody's tracking sheet is adjustment to the teacher retirement system. Where applicable, excuse me. Okay. And the next thing is an adjustment for the teamwork billing. And teamwork is sort of like, I think, it's like a PeopleSoft that the state accounting department uses for human resources to keep track of your leave and your sick days and vacation and pay raises. And it's sort of like PeopleSoft, but it's called TeamWorks. And first of all, thank you so much, Commissioner, for coming. If you'd like to go on, and we've got several questions to ask you. First of all, how do you plan to use your 1%?
Yes, ma'am. In discussions at this point, we've talked about using that for pay for performance, to be based on the performance of the employees. With 1%, that's a very small amount for our agency, so we'll dole that out based on the performance of the employees in the past fiscal year.
How much would that mean to your agency?
I think it's $15,000 or $16,000.
Oh, okay.
It's not a huge sum.
Okay.
It's not on my tracking sheet in front of me. I apologize for not.
No, that's okay, but you can probably figure that one in your head.
Yes,
The next thing is, we know that in the budget, the governor has recommended that we transfer the staff of water and soil over through Department of Ag as a program.
Yes, ma'am.
How do you feel about being a program and not an agency, an attached agency?
Yes, ma'am. Certainly the tracking sheet before you has been proposed certainly from the governor's office, and certainly you have before you does have it proposed as a program. Certainly as an agency, we work for the governor, and we can work in what situation the is provided to us. As a point of personal preference, we would certainly like to be an attached agency. From the standpoint, it allows us to continue our non-regulatory agency functions under Department of Ag, still provide service to our 40 soil and water conservation districts and 370 supervisors that represent each county in the state, and allow us to be more self-supporting in the things that we do day to day. So that would be my response to that question.
How many current employees do you have in water and soil?
We currently have 39 employees in the agency, 18 of which are funded with federal or other funds. So basically half of our staff receive either part or whole funding from funds outside of state funds.
How many people do you have in executive positions?
Currently in our administration program, we have 6 field positions and 2 vacant.
When you move over to the Department of Ag, will you be able to eliminate any positions or combine them?
We do have the opportunity to do that. Certainly in what's proposed before you on the tracking sheet from the governor's recommendations, there's some major reductions in staff. As an attached agency, we would be required to do a lot of the same entities. Same things we do now as an entity, which is budget, human resource, purchasing, things of that nature in an attachment. As a program, then we would not need to do those things. So that would be the reductions that you see before you would be based on a program.
Well, in an attached agency, you would not have to. You would have a human resource persons for 39 people.
We have one person that does human resources and contracting for the agency. We receive about $2.5 million in federal funds that we contract out. He handles that plus the personal services and human resource activities of the agency. It's not a sole position.
Okay. Do I have any other questions?
Okay.
Representative Bryant.
In your assessment, what's going to be the difference in the ability of your department to draw down and work these federal funds that you incorporate into your program, and as compared to being an attached agency as against being a department?
Certainly, as a department, we have autonomy of receipt of funds and how the funds are used. There's no administrative fee that's taken off the top or anything when funds come directly to the Soil and Water Commission. Certainly, under Department of Ag, we've already had conversations with Department of Ag folks. Once the governor's budget came out and it was public knowledge, It's my assurance from the commissioner that they will not take any administrative funds off any funds that come through as an attached agency. I've already had that conversation with the commissioner.
Do you feel that the Commissioner of Agriculture would possibly be in a stronger position for dealing with the federal government or some of the other agencies that you're getting some of this money from? It might be an asset.
I think it could be an asset, Representative. Certainly, he represents us well, certainly as a state, but certainly in D.C. with the matters as it relates to the federal government. And we, honestly, our constituency in a lot of cases are the same constituency in separate agencies as we are to be together.
That's my feeling, and I think that that he could, and if he chooses to, and I think he will, be a strong advocate for you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Do I have any other questions? If there are no other questions, thank you for coming.
Thank you, Chair Lady.
Next, we have the Department of Community Affairs.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. How are you all today?
Doing great.
Good morning. Good afternoon. Good afternoon.
Will you be presenting, Commissioner?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. We're just glad to have you here, and we appreciate the job you're doing. And we have one question. How do you propose to use the 1%?
We propose to use the 1% by looking at our employees who have, with our reduction in force over the past 5 years, have taken on additional duties and have done an outstanding job in those duties. We propose to look at kind of some top performers that we would like to retain within our department.
Just for the audience, how much money are we talking about?
$36,410.
Okay, so
for 425 employees.
for 400, well, that it sort of spreads it sort of thin.
It does, but we also feel we do feel confident. We appreciate that on behalf of, we appreciate that the legislature and OPB and the governor's office is suggesting this. We, as you know, are federally funded as well, and so we hope to tap into some additional federal monies to maybe partner with those state funds to provide for allowances of more.
Thank you. I think we had some questions. Representative Welch.
Thank you, Commissioner. The question I have for you is, I know that the cities are spearheading comprehensive planning with local governments, and there had been a discussion about the frequency in which comprehensive plans were required. And I had a question about what is the current status of that, and how frequent will the department be requiring local governments to update their comprehensive plan?
Their comprehensive plan. John?
Currently, cities and counties have to submit a 10-year comprehensive plan. I know the focus has been more on short-term work programs from cities and counties. So, and it's a much lower level of planning and reporting required of the local governments. So we've been asking local governments to tell us about their short plan strategies that they plan to use, as opposed to a very large planning process. But I believe that 10-year time frame is still in place. What we've lessened are the reporting requirements in the interim.
Do I hear any other questions? I have one other question. I didn't, we talked a little about it, and then the weather came up, and I didn't get to meet with y'all. There were some concerns about the audit report on the number of authorities we had who were not reporting, and I understand this was not under your watch. What do you plan to do about organizing to make sure all authorities report?
Well, we plan to make sure that the authorities are checking in on an annual basis, as they are supposed to the Department of Community Affairs. I think the big question is, as the department receives that information, what exactly do we do with that, being that the Department of Community Affairs is not a regulatory agency. And so we will be working with others to figure out, is that something that the state should be doing, or should that oversight and the regulations be done at a local level? It's very interesting when you look at these development authorities. Number one, they should always be within the rule of the law. They should always be reporting. But it's also very important for us to remember and to communicate to our local partners that it is the local partners who are appointing these boards and who these boards are representing. So I think it's a partnership from our department to the local communities to make sure that the information we are receiving at the state, that we are communicating and that the locals are making sure that they are compliant.
Thank you. Any other questions? Representative Welch.
On that same point, is it not true that the local development authorities that are established by cities, they're not, as I recall in the law, there's not a way to dissolve those development authorities. And do you keep track of at all whether those development authorities are actually functioning, active in any way, or non-active? And if you do, I'd like to see the numbers and see what the listing is with respect to those development authorities.
We can provide that follow-up for you. We do take in that information on an annual basis.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? That's all today. Thank you, and thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
Georgia Environmental Finance Authority.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair.
Hey, thank you so much for coming. For ones of y'all haven't met Commissioner Clark or Director Clark, or
Kevin Clark.
I don't know how you go. Is it Commissioner, Director, or just Kevin?
Kevin.
Thank you so much for being here. I had one question to start off with. The state budget has almost $300,000 of state money in your budget, and that's sort of a base budget. Can you tell me how that is used and how the agency works with the Georgia Rural Water Authority?
Mm-hmm. That's exactly who the money goes through or to, and they contract, Georgia Rural Water contracts with us and provides a whole host of services to the small communities, whether it's testing their systems, providing training for their folks, doing leak detection services. We have a whole host of services that Georgia Rural Water does for the small systems and the rural systems.
And so that's how your $298,000 goes directly to the the Georgia Rural Water.
Mm-hmm.
Next question. Do I have any other questions? That was just my one question. Just anybody have a question? Thank you. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Georgia Regional Transportation Authority.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee. I'm Janine Miller, the Executive Director of GRETA, and this is Mark Peoples, our Chief Financial Officer, Budget Director.
Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for having us.
The first question I had to ask you is, during the snowstorm, how many buses did you have trapped?
We're still doing a full count of that because we do operate with a few different contractors, so the numbers are still coming in, but our initial counts were probably close to half of our buses were stuck in the snow and ice.
Okay, I didn't know how many. That was one of the questions that we had. Now, you get the 1% merit raise from the governor's office that's recommended.
Yes.
How do you plan to spend that?
It's a very good question. We have been instituting a performance evaluation and performance recognition program. This 1% is adjustment in our personal services is really going to help us reward those employees who have been performing, because recruitment is becoming an issue, but retention is really, as the economy gets better, retention is really an issue, and we want to make sure to keep those that have been performing well. We have records of their performance, and we'll be rewarding them. We also have an employee recognition program, where once every quarter we recognize our best employees with a we're able to give them just a little token of a bag right now, we might be able to institute that. Really, this is going to go to the employees that are working hard for us that we might lose to private sector otherwise.
Getting back to the buses that are trapped, but don't you have a lot of buses that are trapped in traffic every day? How are you going to distinguish the ones that are really trapped in traffic and the ones that are trapped in snow? I mean, I think
typically by the time folks are, I'm at home at my dinner table, all of our buses have dropped off our last passengers. We were still, when we were at breakfast at the office that morning, because we had stayed overnight, my staff and I, many of my staff and I had stayed overnight. By the time we were having breakfast on Wednesday morning, I still had half my buses on the road. So that's how we knew that those were stuck in different traffic than is typical. It was the afternoon, Wednesday afternoon, we dropped off our last passenger that had boarded on Tuesday.
Representative Welch.
Where was that passenger during the overnight? Was it on the bus stuck?
Mm-hmm. Thankfully, we had warm, comfortable seats for our passengers. We had plenty of fuel in our buses, and it was a safe environment. We had no injuries, of course, no fatalities. Our drivers and our passengers were all safe.
Was there any damage to the buses?
We're still doing an account of that. That is even more difficult to fully assess. But if it's any buses that are running today were safe, roadworthy.
There are a number of it's kind of tied into your department, but there are a number of projects that are going with DOT where you'll have managed lane projects, and one thing I've noticed is that, and it's a question mark in my mind, as to whether or not there's a Greta staff member talking with the Georgia Department of Transportation member about the location of these facilities, the on and off access ramps to the facilities relative to where your buses Greta's buses would enter these systems. For example, in Henry County, we have a number of access points, but out of those access points, they're all located a great distance from where a Greta bus stop currently exists. And so there's a question in my mind as to whether or not there is adequate planning going on between the two entities so as to make sure that those bus locations are either relocated or are located, the access to those managed lanes are located in a manner that would facilitate the use of them by the buses.
Indeed. The planning process for deciphering where managed lanes go, and particularly the access points, have a multitude of factors. And I'm sure that Commissioner Keith Golden can go through some of those with you, as well as Chris Tomlinson at the Toll Authority. Only one of those factors, of the multitude of factors, is bus access. There's very much about it that's engineering, where there's land available, and traffic flow, but the bus park and ride location is only one small factor. That said, yes, we do. They do bring that into the planning process that's been going on for years and years and years as part of a federally required process. So there are many boxes that have to be checked. That said, we're taking a look at where we might be able to shimmy in some additional opportunities for better access to the lanes. But the way it stands is the way it will go forward, and we feel like we're still going to be able to provide a really good service in that area for folks who aren't able to or willing to pay the toll. The bus does provide them another reliable commute option to the toll of the managed lane.
Thank you.
Representative Von Epps.
Ms. Miller, there was some mention about the merit-based pay. How much is your total merit-based pay for Greta?
Like many other state agencies, a lot of our funding comes from federal sources. So the 1% was just generated on the state dollars. So the 1% wouldn't even be something I could spread evenly across. It wouldn't be enough, because we have so many of our employees who have federal dollars in their salaries. So the 1% that's in the budget is around $26,000. To get us up to a full 1% for the entire staff is $41,000.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you, Ms. Miller.
Thank you very much.
We're just moving right along. Economic development. Thank you, Commissioner Carr.
Good afternoon.
Thank you for coming, and if you'd like to make a statement, if not, we'll just go right into questions. Take your choice.
I'm just glad we were on time today, Madam Chair.
All right. How do you plan to spend the 1% merit pay?
Based on two factors. One will be on performance, working with each department at economic development, as well as working in some areas that maybe had some inequities. We're going to try to look at both of those factors as we look at the merit pay.
All right. The next thing, in the governor's budget, we're moving the governor's office of workforce development over to economic development.
Yes, ma'am.
Would you tell us how you plan, what's the agency plan for the governor's office of workforce development?
Sure. From a strategic standpoint, we think it makes a lot of sense, because one of the things that we're trying to tell each company is if you come and invest in Georgia, or if you expand in Georgia, we want to make sure that you're going to be successful. And one of the top two issues that we hear is workforce training. And so to be able to have the Office of Workforce Development in economic development, and you do have to firewall federal dollars from the state dollars, so it's not going to be an economic development issue. But once you are here, we want to make sure that we're going to continue to work with you to train workforce. So strategically, this is going to be a very good thing for the department.
Anybody have any questions on the workforce development? Representative Welch.
I'm sorry. No.
No questions. The next question, I think the next question is for the Research Alliance, and I think they're coming next. And any other questions for Commissioner Carr? Yes, okay, Representative Welch. I knew you'd have a question. That's the reason I called on you.
Thank you. With respect to the federal funds, I see that there's, and this is just me learning the process, so I'll take a little education from you. On the federal funds that are not itemized, there's $73 million that's set aside. Could you explain a little bit of what those funds cover?
Sure. I think I may let John Moffitt take this one.
In our budget, the $73 million is made up of accounts for the arts, which is about, I think the state puts in about $659,000 each year, but actually their grant is a little bit more from the National Endowment of the Arts. I think it's just under $800,000. And then the remaining share of that is on the workforce development. On the workforce development program, I believe there's 19 entities around the state that get that funding. 95% of that funding has to go out to those workforce development entities. And they get to use about 4 to 5% for the administrative piece. That's for salaries, rent, and other operating expenses.
How long have we had that monetary stream coming in from the federal government, and how long are we expecting it to continue?
I don't know. I mean, I would hope that it's going in perpetuity, but I don't know. We haven't heard anything. It's been going on for years. They're just becoming a part of our agency in the FY15 budget, but I don't know of anything where they're discontinuing it. There's been no word of that.
And then
I think that it sort of moved around. It was in labor, and then it was in the governor's office,
Yes.
and then now it's in economic development. We're just trying to find a home or a good fit for it, and I think maybe we've arrived at a good fit.
I believe so.
And then the tobacco settlement funds, that there's about $1.2 million.
That's the Research Alliance, and they're coming up next.
Okay, good.
That goes to the Cancer Coalition.
Does it go to the scholars, or does it go to
well,
or does it
Mike
go to
Cassidy's here, they can answer, but we get,
Okay.
yeah, we get two funds. We get money for GRA, which is state funding, and then the tobacco funding goes to the Cancer Coalition.
Okay,
Which it goes through GRA.
all right, we'll add,
Yes.
okay. I think some people had some questions on that and about exactly how it was divided up and everything. If there are no other questions, thank you so much for coming. Okay.
Oh, sorry. Let's look at the track sheet.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for coming, President Cassidy. It is President. Okay, I have to get all these titles straightened out. Okay, one thing that Representative Welch mentioned was the tobacco settlement money of $1.8 million that was in economic development.
Yes.
Okay, and tell me how the Research Alliance uses this funds.
Let me just take you back 3 years. There was an entity called the Georgia Cancer Coalition. 3 years ago, that entity was merged into the Georgia Research Alliance. And so we are now responsible for legacy programs of the Georgia Cancer Coalition. The one that we're left responsible for is the recruitment of the scientific talent.
So do you take the 1.8 million to that?
We do, yes. There are, through the life of the Cancer Coalition, there were a total of about 170 scientists and clinicians that were recruited through that initiative. And when they were recruited, they were committed 5 years of funding for their program. And so over the years, that grew significantly while we were funding over 100 at a time. But for the past, I think, 6 years, that balance each year declines as we complete those 5-year commitments to the individuals that were recruited. And so, for instance, in this present year, we have 35, in the FY14, we have 35 of those individuals left on the rolls. And next year, that will drop down to 19 individuals. And so each year, the funding requirement becomes less and less. In fact, by fiscal 16, we'll only have 2 commitments remaining to those scientists and clinicians.
Well, when you say Cancer Coalition, now I thought that we put part of the Cancer Coalition in public health.
You have.
Okay.
As of last year, as of
tell me about this core group.
Okay. So
what is all that?
So what was the Cancer Coalition was brought into the Research Alliance, there were 4 funding components to what was the Georgia Cancer Coalition. There was a funding component to recruit talent, what we call the Distinguished Cancer Scientists, clinicians. There was a funding component for the regional centers, 6 regional centers around the state. There was a funding component for what was called a biorepository, which was a physical facility over at Georgia Regents University that held tissue samples for research. And a 4th component for Georgia Core. And Georgia Core's responsibility is really education, introduction of clinical trials statewide, a lot of interaction with the regional centers. So if you look at that, one of those programs related closely to what we do at the Georgia Research Alliance, which is recruit scientific talent. The other 3 programs really were more public health, if you will. And a decision that the governor's office made with this present year in fiscal 14 was to take the 3 programs that looked more like public health programs and move that funding to the Department of Public Health, much like we had done in aligning the Research Alliance with the Department of Economic Development. So Georgia Core is yet another independent entity that was created about 10 years ago to manage this education and training and clinical trials programs. And it was associated with the Georgia Cancer Coalition. When we unwound the Georgia Cancer Coalition, CORE became a fully freestanding, independent, nonprofit organization that for 2 years had a contract with the Georgia Research Alliance where we passed funding through to CORE, and they managed the funding for the regional centers. I know this is complicated. They managed the funding for the regional centers for those 2 years, in addition to their own education and training programs and clinical trials programs. What has happened now, effective with fiscal 14, is those regional centers are getting their funding directly from public health, just as Georgia Core is. They have a contract with the Department of Public Health for funding of their programs. The biorepository, that other entity, that's been wound down altogether and merged into GRU, Georgia
So
Regents.
CORE is funded through public health.
Some of their programs are funded through public health. They are a nonprofit, independent organization. They secure fairly significant private funding from a number of foundations for their education programs. In addition, they have a contract now with the Department of Public Health for specific program activity.
Okay, so no direct funding goes to that from the state funding?
To Georgia Core?
Uh-huh.
No, there's a couple $100,000, I believe, in public health's budget that is contracted to Georgia Core.
Okay.
You'd need to get the specifics
Okay,
from
all right.
public health. But
It's sort of confusing trying to...
I understand it has been,
Tracking.
and you've been very willing to try to unravel all these parts.
Okay.
But the funding that's now in Economic Development's budget is specifically for a contract with the Research Alliance to manage the completion of the program that was for recruiting scientist clinicians.
Okay. Representative Alves.
As you talk about the completion of that particular program, so it's going to disappear, there's no need, the vision, the mission has expired?
No, it's just I think our commitment to the state funding for that program has been winding down. That was part of the original program when the Cancer Coalition was founded at the beginning of Governor Barnes' term. He made a commitment on behalf of the state to fund for about 10 years the ramp up of the program. So it's had several successful components. I think among them the regional centers as well as the recruitment of talent. Now, a number of these investigators and clinicians that have been recruited are still embedded in 17 different academic institutions across the state. And we would hope that they would be retained. The idea in recruiting them was to provide funding to them over a 5-year period to get their programs up and running to where they would be productive in attracting federal funding from the National Cancer Institute or the National Institutes of Health. And many of them have been very, very successful in that regard. We have seen a little more attrition in that program than we would want, and we're trying to address making sure that we retain some of the top talent that had been recruited over the years. But the vision and the mission of the initiative, I think, are still very much alive, although spread into different places now, either within public health, core, even some of the work that we do at the Research Alliance to attract the top research talent in cancer. And then, of course, the state's making significant investments in Georgia Regents University to help move their cancer center up to a top-ranked institution as well.
And how well is that retention going as far as the institution retaining some of those top scientists?
I think generally well. We have seen more attrition in these people that were recruited than we might see in some of the other programs that we manage at the Georgia Research Alliance. Part of that is that with the programs of the Cancer Coalition, we were, in addition to recruiting highly regarded, high-ranked individuals, we were recruiting young faculty, junior faculty. And I think in many cases they were doing what a lot of people would do. They saw an opportunity to come to Georgia to take advantage of a startup funding program, and as their credentials grew and their funding wound down, they became attractive to other places that wanted to recruit them. So the higher ranked faculty, I think most of them are still in place, whether it's at Georgia Regents, at Emory University, at Georgia Tech, at University of Georgia, or even out in some of the clinics in the regional programs. So.
Any other questions? Representative Welch.
With the winding down of the recruitment program, we're seeing now we have about, is it the $1.8 million, is that all going into recruitment, or is that going into recruitment and other things?
It's principally recruitment. There's a small amount of that that's program administration.
So projecting the future, you're saying, I think it was 2017, that you'll only have two candidates?
Fiscal 2016, there'll only be 2.
Okay.
Right? We have dropped about 14, 15, 16 per year because we were ramping up 14, 15, 16 per year for a number of years.
And I wasn't clear as to, is that a result of the funding loss over time, that we have lower recruitment, or are we making a decision, or are we ending the program?
Within the program, we had made the decision. The program was designed so that an individual would only get 5 years of assistance in startup, getting their lab up and running. And so we each year would recruit a class of about 15 individuals. And when that got to a peak, then we began dropping a class of 15 per year. And we're just seeing the effects of that over the past 5 to 6 years now. And each year that program funding's been decreasing.
And the program funding is decreasing. Is that a result of the the natural attrition of the tobacco settlement funds, or is it some other decision?
No, it was by design. The program would have roughly a 10-year life cycle, and it was by design that we would peak at a certain point and then begin winding down.
Okay, thank you.
Excuse me. Any other questions? Thank you, and thank you for the job you're doing.
Appreciate it.
We appreciate it. Thank you. Georgia Council for the Arts. We're moving a little fast. Maybe did you hear from Karen? Okay, well I just saw, well, I think I was looking at a different list. That's right. Okay. I was looking for the list of who represented who, and she just, okay, excuse me. Karen, I know you'd have been here if we needed you. Thank you. Okay, Department of Transportation.
Chairman?
Thank you, Commissioner Golden, and thank you for the job you did the last 2 or 3 days. I know it's been tough on you, and
understatement.
And I know you cannot control Mother Nature, but thank you for the job you did. We appreciate it.
Well, no problem.
We have a few questions I wanted to ask, and to start off with, and it's about the intermodal program.
Yes, ma'am.
And how do you break down transit from ports and waterways and rails? How are those broken down into the amount of...
They're all tracked as sub-programs.
Okay, and they're all broken down in the budget in that way, and the amount of money you put in each?
Yes, ma'am. One of the concerns when y'all actually allowed us to consolidate those programs to be able to better leverage our dollars is y'all wanted them tracked so that y'all could understand how much revenue is going into each of the
Yeah,
programs.
well, I couldn't follow it on the tracking sheet. Maybe
I can give you the, I've got it right here. Already got it.
Could you share on the maybe it's in the governor's big budget, but on the tracking sheet is what I used. I didn't see it was broken down.
It's rolled up in intermodal, but we do.
It's all rolled up into
in the budget, yes, ma'am.
And
Just,
one big thing, we'd like it broken down and how
Sure, I
much
can
you
give you
use
just
in each place.
all right. Let's see first. You got it broken in airport aid? Yeah, airport aid is a little over.
Well, let's see transit first. Airport aid first. Okay.
Okay. Airport aid, federal program's about $35 million, and the state motor fuel or the state general fund dollars is a little over $2.5 million.
2.5 million in state, and in federal is how much?
35.5.
35.5 million. Okay. Transit.
Federal is 31.3 million, and state general funds is 3.175 million.
Okay. Ports and waterways.
Ports and waterways is around roughly 852,000 in state general funds.
852,000.
And that covers the tax bill that we have to pay on that property.
How much didn't your tax bill go down this year?
It looks like it's for 14. It was $635,000.
Okay, and you had budgeted 852.
And yes, ma'am.
Okay. All right, and rail.
About 356,000 state general funds.
300 and.
Okay, she's got it broken in a little better. Yeah, because on the transit side, it's state general funds is 3.1. But that's transit. I've given her transit already.
Transit, rail, ports, and airport aid. That's it, and then it all ties to them.
Right. So if you roll up on the transit and the rail, it's $66 million in federal dollars. State general funds about 6.97 million.
Wait, the transit and the rail, you combine those? Did you say?
Chairman, how Airport Aid, if you take Airport Aid, the rail program, and the transit program, all the intermodal programs together, there's roughly $66.8 million in federal funds that leverage the intermodal programs, of which 6.9 that's appropriated, you see in the appropriation, makes up on the state general fund side of the house, and then there's roughly $100,000 and in other funds that go into those programs, and those are like license fees for the airport, rail leases that we have in the rail program, and then bus rental for the transit.
How much did you put in rail and state funds?
$356,000.
Right,
$356,000, as I said earlier. Yeah.
Okay, and how much federal went into rails?
That's the part.
No federal.
There's no federal rail.
No federal. Okay. All right. The 1% raise. How do you plan to use that?
Snow plows and spreaders, I think. But,
okay.
But no, actually, we have a problem like many state agencies. The 1%, because we have the blended salaries,
right.
The 1% is given in the recommended budget. Doesn't cover a 1% across the board. But recruitment and retention, both of engineers and accountants, is a big area that we'll be working on. And basically, our focus on our high performers, those that have been out there for several years being high performers, even though we have not been able to give them increases. We're trying to isolate those that have sustained that for some period of time. And that's the areas we've been focused on, trying to strategically talk about what we'd like to do.
Right. Representative Welch, do you have any questions? Representative Van Apps, excuse me. You're 25? Okay.
Mr. Commissioner, talk a little bit about the high performance. How do you measure those high performance and so forth?
Well, we actually obviously use the state SPA method for measurement, but on the scale of 0 to 5.
Right.
And we've got people who consistently, year after year go between 4s and 5s. And so those are the people that have just, even though they haven't had increases or raises, they just consistently get the job done. And we're looking for those people who've been doing that 2 and 3 years in a row.
Okay.
Any other questions, Representative Van Apps? Representative Welch.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Would you mind explaining to the subcommittee in your budget the difference between the local road assistance and the construction administrative programs that
Right.
you're operating?
Right. Several years ago, the positions from that used to be in that program were moved up to construction admin, but the money to go along with the personal services was not moved there. And so for probably the last 3 years in a row, we've actually had to come back to you and request that those monies be moved either in the amended budget or through the budget process. And so local road administrative program is really just we have local maintenance improvement grant program, which is the formula distribution, right? And we have a few people that's charged to that. And then we have folks in our district levels that help with some of the smaller local programs and working with local governments. They're still in that program. I think our state aid is still in that program also. So that's kind of a small group of people. The majority of our people are in construction admin, though, doing what we would consider to be the design, right-of-way acquisition, surveying, environmental approvals, and construction inspection.
And will the Georgia Department of Transportation continue with its kind of the quick start program that we voted on today, where you're accelerating programs and putting in ACL, decel lanes quickly so you can get projects in? Is that going to be continued?
That is our intention to do it. Obviously, the amount of money in the capital construction program, we asked for about $8 million to be amended in last year, and y'all did that. This year, there's nothing in the budget. We'll have to take it from our capital program, but it's been such a successful program, we're going to try to advantage or leverage every dollar we can for that purpose.
And have y'all thought about showing us as a committee what the taxable repercussions have been? In other words, if you're going in and you're actually improving an intersection, or if you're improving some roadway access to a site, and then that site, typically you see an increase in the assessed value, the taxable value of that property. So in essence, by putting that program in, it should be increasing the value of the property that now has that improvement in front of it. It'd be nice to know, see how that's actually improved the tax base.
We had about 127 projects out of that original allocation you allowed us to do. And also, we partner with economic development on a lot of other projects too around the state, like Caterpillar and some of the other major employers that are coming into the state.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Do you want me to hit real quickly on the federal program? In our 14 amended, you wanted to talk about that, and
right.
Just
okay.
very briefly, obviously we could be very much impacted.
I forgot to ask you that about how we're going to be impacted if we didn't get the federal.
I don't want y'all to be caught cold by some of the highway contractors and others running around the state. But obviously, the transportation bill that we operate under for our federal dollars expires September 30th of this year, and currently the way they've been funding that bill is Congress has been borrowing money from the general fund and propping that up to keep the funding levels at the same level. And that's sort of where we're at today. Is that if they don't continue to do that, what it's going to do to our program moving forward is that if they don't find additional funds or an offset to keep funding at the current federal levels, you'll see that our program in 2016 and beyond will drop about 35% in terms of available money for federal capital projects and capital maintenance projects. But in the fiscal year 2015, which is coming up for us, we could see some substantial hits. In fact, there may not even be any federal obligation authority for us to do, which would mean that we would be operating on our limited state motor fuel dollars that would have been available for the program. But we also have to pay some of our federal commitments, some of those debts that we owe. And so the number of dollars that will be available for capital construction, capital maintenance, right away in fiscal year 2015 for us is going to be a huge challenge. And so we're going to keep you guys informed about where we're at, what's going on in Washington, and make sure that you don't get caught by surprise, because that's probably potentially the big impact to our economy in terms of transportation and what we're doing in the highway industry.
Any questions? Thank you, and please keep us up to date on that.
I will.
Georgia Forestry Commission.
Good afternoon, Madam Chairman and committee
Thank you.
members. I'm Robert Ferris, Director of Georgia Forestry Commission.
Commissioner, I met with you a couple last week or week before last, I can't remember which, and I was concerned about the retention rate that you had in Georgia Forestry because of the pay parity, and I asked you if you would get me a chart and some information about the number of people that you had who you did not retain and how long they worked, and so we could just sort of see about the retention of the employees.
Yes, ma'am, and we have pulled that information together for you, and we have a chart and a graph we can provide. But nutshell, our ranger retention rate is what has really been suffering, and we've seen a doubling of the turnover rate of our rangers or firefighter positions over our 5-year average. And as requested, I did go back and pull down some fiscal year figures. FY10, the firefighters that we hired, 48% turnover with that bunch of firefighters. From 11, a 60% turnover rate with resignations from those hired in FY11 and FY12. 42%, 13, 28%, and those from FY14, 24%. Now we see those numbers dropping some because you got to remember that the folks in FY14 have been with us for 6 months, so that's why you're not seeing as high a turnover rate in those less service years. And you had also requested that we take a look at what our lost training cost and recruitment cost was with those rangers.
Is this an average loss per year, or are you going to do the...
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. We have that actually by year, $393,000 in FY10. Those hired in FY10 from FY11 hires, $819,000. All told, we're looking at $4.5 million in hiring and training cost with the resignations we've had over the past 5 years.
Say that again. How much?
$4.5 million in recruitment, hiring, and training costs.
And another thing about not retaining, a lot of your workman's comp claims are from younger people who've not been on board very long.
Yes, ma'am. 44% of our workers' comp costs come from employees with 5 years or less. That's very telling in the firefighting world. We have many more accidents and injuries with inexperienced and new hired folks.
Did you? I know you want to say something, Representative Nimmer.
I'm a little bit partial to this subject, but no, Director, I appreciate you and everybody at the agency. But you know, one of the things I try to think of things pretty practical, and I think it's fair to say we can put the investment on the front end and make sure we've got a solid agency protecting our natural resources and educating people on market and utilization skills and efforts of timber. Or either we're going to pay for it on the back end through turnover rate and training and loss of people. Is that correct?
Absolutely, sir.
And the $4.5 million that Representative Welch asked about, what was the time frame that monetary value was accumulated?
From FY10 through FY14, through this current year.
From 10 to 14, 4.5 million.
Yes, sir. And again, that's...
I'm sorry?
Representative Black.
You said 44% of your workers' claims were less than 5 year employees. What percentage of your staff is less than 5 years?
I'll get that number for you. I'm drawing a blank right now on the exact number there.
Well, and so many of the staff aren't classified as forest fires too, right?
Yes, ma'am, but the
And
majority.
Yeah, but I would think most of your claims would be with people fighting forests instead of in the office.
Yes, ma'am. It's much more hazardous work. And we have 279 of our rangers is what we currently have, firefighters in the agency. I guess another comment I might make regarding the pay now or pay later, the average salary of our ranger with a family of 4 qualifies for food stamps and peach care. So to your point, Representative Nimmer, pay now or pay later, we'd sure like to get the pay of our folks up where they're not having to make those claims on food stamps and peach care. And House Budget Office has been working with us, OPB, HRA, over the past couple of years, and House Budget Office came up with the research paper looking at things, working with HRA. We contracted with the private consultant, Mercer Consulting firm, to take a look at our pay structure and pay parity and market rates. And then most recently, HRA has done an analysis of the recommendations provided by Mercer. And uniformly across the board, all 3 of those reports come back and point to the fact that our fire-related positions are significantly underneath market rates, market salary rates. Additionally, HRA has provided some information to the fact that across the industry and across most jobs, entry-level pay is at 80% of market rates. We've applied that market rate to our fire control positions out there, fire-related positions out there, and 72% of our firefighters are at or below that minimum entry level of 80% of market. HRA and the consultants have said pretty much, well, duh, that you're losing people. You're not competitive with the market out there.
Madam Chair, the budget here has a change of $660,000. Is that going forward for the 2015 budget? And that's just your 1% merit base increase, or is that included in other items?
No, sir. The majority of that is the employer retirement system adjustments totaling $467,599. The 1% recruitment and retention amounts to $189,000. And to address earlier questions, our hope and plans would be to apply those dollars to our pay parity concerns, again focused on fire-related positions.
Your pay parity concerns amounts to a little over $3.6 million.
Yes, sir. On the key core critical positions, our fire-related positions, rangers, chief rangers, and foresters, the field level positions out there.
And these aren't administrative positions. These are the boots on the ground.
Yes, sir. Boots on the ground, field level positions, and that's where we would be focusing our attention on.
So you're going to put $100,000 into a $3.6 million problem.
That's not a good Band-Aid.
Just making up. Just read the numbers.
We have got to make some forward progress on this concern. Today we're operating with 41% fewer real dollars than we did a decade ago. Our folks have stepped up and found ways to get the job done. It's not been easy. It's been some tough challenges, but nothing in my entire career with the Forestry Commission concerns me like the turnover rate we're seeing right now.
And that 1%, would it be reasonable to expect that we're going to see another $1 million loss by the department if we're not addressing the pay parity issue? Again, the same $1 million we keep losing on lack of retention, workers' comp claims, and training. So we're putting $100,000 into what's going to cost us $900,000 next year. Is that fair to say?
Yes, sir. I expect we will continue to see those recruitment, training costs, and workers' comp costs if we can't start retaining some of our folks. And looking longer term down the road, I've got a real concern about retaining people long enough to get the training and experience for succession planning, where they can move up and be supervisors of those firefighters. Again, boots on the ground people that will lead those rangers.
Madam Chair.
Representative Nimmer.
How long does that take, just out of curiosity? You hire a new employee, you train them, you get them ready for boots on the ground, as we're using that phrase, to get them. How long do they serve in the commission as an employee before they're at that supervisor level? And I'm sure it differentiates between employees according to how well they adapt to their environment. But
well, we require our rangers or firefighters to be instant commander type 4. As opposed to some of our neighboring states, we send one firefighter out on a $250,000 piece of equipment by themselves to put out fire. We stretch our resources doing that rather than sending two like most states. So we expect them to be fully qualified and trained, and it takes about 2 years from the point of hire for that individual to procure their commercial driver's license, to meet all their firefighter certification standards and training. We also require them to pass annually a work capacity test, strapping on 20 pounds on their back and walking 2 miles in 30 minutes. And all told, 2 years. And that's really kind of at the root of one of my big concerns here. When you've got this type of turnover and loss of experienced folks, for every new person that comes in, we can't put them out there by themselves for 2 years. We've got to take another experienced ranger off of a piece of equipment and put them with that new hire. We can't let them operate by themselves.
How many right now would you say, and you may have the number in front of you, empty seats do you have in the commission?
To date, right now, we have 39 vacancies total, and I believe that's 23 of the rangers, firefighters positions.
23 tractor seats empty and 39 vacancies as a whole.
Yes, sir, and those vacancies include those chief rangers, again, boots on the ground, and foresters positions. So
how many employees overall in the whole department?
we have 572 positions. We currently have 534.
You got 534 people covering how many acres are in the state of Georgia?
24, over 24 million acres.
24 million
forest
acres.
land. More forest land than, more timberland, commercially available forest land than any state in the nation.
Madam Chairman.
Representative Black, and who's 25? Representative Epps' lights on. Yours just stays on Representative Black.
Okay.
Representative Epps, and then I'll come to you. Okay.
When you gave the numbers about your loss, 48% in 2010, are those immediate loss, like within a year or within 2 years? Or?
No, sir, that's looking from FY10 to today.
Okay.
So of all the rangers hired in FY10, 48% of those are gone today.
And in 11, 60% have.
Yes, sir.
Wow.
And I've got to add too, we've been doing employed exit interviews for quite a few years here, and it's really difficult going through looking at those and reading those. Just again and again we hear, I love my job, I love the people we're working with, I love what I do, love the public service, but I simply can't afford to work with the Forestry Commission anymore. So.
Do y'all pay overtime?
No, ma'am.
And I think that's one thing when we had the forest fire down in Waycross, all the number of hours they had to put in, but they got no overtime pay.
Yes, ma'am, and it's not only overtime. We require our firefighters to be on call to respond to fires as they're called in, and our rangers average 51 hours a week on call. Now, being on call means that they have to be wherever they're at, whatever they're doing. When they're on call, they have to be able to get in that tractor truck and respond to a fire within 45 minutes. So they can't go very far from the office or from home while they're on call.
How often are they on call?
They average 51 hours a week on call is what our firefighters and rangers average.
You mean they work 40 hours and then they average 51 hours on call?
Yes, ma'am. I think part of the challenge there too is remembering that since 2009 we've lost 111 state funded positions in the Forestry Commission. So we're asking our folks again to do more with less.
Where do most people go to work after they leave y'all?
There's quite a variety of areas. We lose a lot of folks that just go to be truck drivers, delivery trucks, CDL with their CDL licenses, driving a Coca-Cola truck, driving a garbage truck. Some going over into private industry, forest industry. But it's a pretty good mix, but the majority is moving over into private industry. We lose some to the county fire departments, some to other state forestry agencies, but majority in private industry.
Have you looked at our pay scale according to what other states pay?
Yes, ma'am.
And how do we compare?
That was part of the analysis. But we were requested to take a look at some similar state forestry agencies and comparable. We looked at Florida and North Carolina. Our pay scales are significantly below those folks. Additionally, those states pay overtime to their folks, callback pay. Not a very positive comparison, but that's not who we lose people to mostly. Not to other states, but it's in-stated in their hometowns.
Any other questions? Representative Black, did you ask me?
Back to this workers' comp thing, if you would get some figures that, first off, you said 44% of your claims were 5 years and less. We need to, for that to be meaningful, we need to know the percentage of your firefighters that are in that category. We also need to know the magnitude of those claims. That's convert them percentages to dollars.
Yes, sir, we'll do that. And I know we've got the numbers figures. I just can't put my fingers on them right now.
I would say, Representative Black, that basically I talked with Workers' Comp DOS, and they talked that we saw a reduction of 20%. It would be about a $200,000 actual real deduction in our premium rate, which is now over $600,000. So we could see a reduction in actual premium rate because we're going to have to reduce those real claims, like you mentioned.
Your own premium.
What's that?
You write your own premium.
That's right. And until we can reduce those claims over time, we'd see a reduction in that workers' comp premium. We'll get you that.
Representative Clark.
You mentioned the pay disparity between South Carolina and Florida. What kind of difference is there?
That is in the House budget report. Let me see if I can go to that right quick here. And it was North Carolina and Florida. Did pop to something else looking at the, and I'll get you copies of this, but comparing states, looking at those facts, Georgia has many more privately owned forested acres than North Carolina or Florida. Georgia's forest manufacturing accounts for nearly 13% of the state's total manufacturing, making it twice as important from a manufacturing standpoint as Florida and North Carolina. Georgia experiences many more wildfires than comparison states, and Georgia's investment in firefighters and fire suppression equipment is up to half as little in comparison to those states. So basically what we're doing, again, doing more with less, we're asking our firefighters and suppression equipment is expected to respond and protect up to twice as many privately owned acres as in those states. Now I will get those figures to you, and it will take me just a second. I don't know if Tracy can flip to that faster than I can, but
and Tracy, we appreciate all the work you did on this.
The Forestry Commission tracks all their data, so it was easy to write.
Yeah, here we go. She flipped right to it in a second. Florida's looking at 34.5. Our average is 28. Let me find North Carolina here. North Carolina 34,474 again compared as far as our trained and certified firefighters. Florida firefighters earn overtime pay. They receive on-call pay. That's 51 hours a week that I mentioned. $1 per hour being on-call. Florida has a 25-year full retirement. Ours, of course, is 30. Additionally, firefighters in Florida get an additional 1.4% on their pension earnings as public safety officers. Insurance premiums are less than half the cost of comparable insurance rates in Georgia. They have 8 years retirement vesting compared to 10 years in Georgia, and similar type figures for North Carolina. And again, all this is in the House budget report that Tracy's worked up. And
well, since you don't give overtime pay, how do you, when they work overtime, how do you compensate them? Do they get more vacation time?
Time off.
Do they have time to take it when they're on call 51 hours?
That can be a challenge in years like 2007 and 2011. It's very difficult to do that, but that's how we do that, time off for overtime work.
Okay. Representative Nimmer.
I understand doing more with less, but you referenced 07 and 11, and I think our state really opened its eyes to just how little you guys have and how much y'all are doing and have done. But we're in 2014, and it seems like a lot of us, and I'm in the boat with everybody, we tend to forget just a few years removed of what all efforts took place and how things came together. We're not as strong today as we were then. Is that correct? And getting weaker every day. I mean,
certainly we've got fewer resources to respond to those extreme situations, and I don't want anybody to get me wrong. None of us at any state, at any level, state or federal or county, have all the fire resources for the worst case scenario.
Right.
What concerns me again is those worst case scenarios seem to be coming more frequently.
I think my point that I want to make, and I'm sure everybody here knows it just sometimes it helps to hear it, is that not only are y'all doing more with less, have done more with less, but you're at a point now where you can't do with what you have. We have an incident, we're in some serious trouble today. There's some people that's going to see, and we're speaking fire specific, subdivisions getting burned and structures getting engulfed in flames. Outside of that, the department does so much more outside of just fire protection. And I think that's a message we all forget sometimes. You think Georgia Forestry, immediately everybody sees fire plows and a control burn, Smokey the Bear. We've got to hear constantly and consistently what you guys need, because and I understand that we have all sat up here and we've asked everybody in the state to make some hard decisions, take cuts, submit flat budgets that are based upon previous year's cuts. I think you guys are a little bit unique in that you started out extremely lean in times that we were cutting. And I think everybody needs to realize that if I've got my data right, and you may have a more accurate number, the forest industry in the state of Georgia generates somewhere between $25 and $32 billion a year in the state.
28.9.
28.9 is pretty close.
Yes, sir.
And we're asking you guys to go out there as a state service with 530 plus employees, covering a little over 24 million forested acres in the state, and we're telling you to take care of that with $3.7 million less than you need. Is that right? Yeah.
Yes, sir. We've got several program areas. A big one there is, of course, working with landowners and forest management practices and promoting forestry throughout the world, Georgia's forest products. And we've seen some tremendous gains in total economic impact. The numbers you were referring to, 16% increase in our most recent study in conjunction with Georgia Tech to $28.9 billion. That provides well over 135,000 jobs in Georgia. Over this past year, we've seen a 15% growth in those jobs, a 24% increase in state and revenues coming to the state of Georgia through forest industry, $603 million this past year, and state taxes coming to the state of Georgia. We're seeing a lot of growth. A bit biased in my opinion, but a lot based on the work that we do here in Georgia. Georgia's leading the nation in the production of bioenergy pellet mills. We have the largest mill there in Waycross. Rayonier just invested $400 million in expanding their pulp mill in South Georgia. Our sawmills are starting to grow double production. TMOs and REITs are making investments in Georgia forest lands, and part of it is because of the security they feel in coming to Georgia and the resources that are out there that we promote and protect. So,
I appreciate what y'all do with so little.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank
you. Georgia, the State Road and Tollway Authority.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair.
Good afternoon, Commissioner. Nice to have you here.
Yes. So you know, Tracy's handing out is some background information primarily on the Georgia Transportation Infrastructure Bank, because what's in the governor's FY15 budget is approximately just shy of $9.4 million in additional funding for that program. But I provide that for information, and I can certainly speak to the 9.4 million and the GTIP program.
Okay, and the 9.4 million. Could you provide the subcommittee with a list of the anticipated projects and how that funding will be used?
Yes, what we can do is provide a list of the project applications that we've received to date. We're still in the evaluation process on what would be our third round of funding. So I can provide the list of applicants.
So you've already had 2 rounds of funding?
Yes, in previous years, that's correct.
In previous years, but for 2015, it hasn't come up, the funding?
That's correct. And in fact, we're currently looking at this third round, and we could see it next year with this funding a 4th round of funding for projects. We typically have done calls based on the available funds for the program, and we opened up the last window from, I believe it was August to October 31st, received 58 applications, a total of requests of approximately $80 million in funds to enable approximately $170 million in projects to go forward. Even with this funding, of course, it wouldn't be enough to fund all of the project applications. So it's a very competitive program.
Representative, did you have a?
No.
Okay. Any questions? On your tollways, tell me about the tollway down in Henry County. Yes. At Eagles Landing. That's where I have a lot of problems.
There's no funding in there for that. No.
There's no funding in there?
No. So we're working closely with our partners over at the Georgia Department of Transportation, and by the fall of 2016, the plan is to open a approximately 12-mile long, 2-lane reversible managed lane. These would be new lanes, so new capacity, not a conversion. And all passenger vehicles would have to pay a toll, but the facility could be used for free by transit, such as Greta buses, MARTA, if there was Cobb County, any type of public transit, as well as registered van pools. And the project is underway. It's in the design phase as we speak, and we're working closely with the contractor as well as GDOT.
Well, it's in design, so you think you're going to have it open by 2016?
Yes, ma'am. It's a design-build project. GDOT had done preliminary plans to a certain point, and the plan, because there's essentially what we call a greenfield project, they're building most of it in the median, so there isn't a right-of-way acquisition. So it's a question of planning out the road infrastructure and getting down to actual construction, which I believe GDOT anticipates would occur sometime early next year.
Yes. Okay, good. Representative P.
You know, I travel that road a bunch of days.
Okay.
So it's going to be reversible lanes? Is that the plan?
Yes,
okay.
sir.
Yeah.
It's 2 lanes that will be traveling in towards Atlanta in the morning and reverse during the midday, and coming back headed out of the city. On the weekends or special events like at the Atlanta Motor Speedway, you may see published notice that will get the word out because we may change based on the flow of traffic.
And that'll be the first time we've done that in Georgia, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
A lot of people hear and speak a lot about the Northwest Corridor project in Cobb, but this project will actually open first.
Yeah. Okay. Good luck.
Thank you.
Get going.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Any other questions? And you're going to get us a list. I don't know if we need a list of all the applicants, but maybe the list of the projects that you anticipate.
Yeah, we can provide you a list. It'll list those that are grants. It's 50 grant requests and 8 loan requests. But we can provide a list. So just quickly show the name of the applicant as well as a short name description of the project. And we'd be happy to provide additional information.
Okay, and if you'll get with Tracy about that, and she'll get it to us and everything.
Yes,
Thank you
ma'am.
so much, and thank you. And, yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't see you blinking. Okay, excuse me.
Thank you.
Ron Mayer.
What's the anticipated loss of revenue from the 400 toll?
The 400 toll, it's approximately $20 to $21 million a year. On average, it brought in anywhere from $20 to $22 million a year.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Did you have a question, Representative? Okay. Okay. All right. No other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Department of Ag, and our commissioner couldn't be here with us today, but he's going to be here on Wednesday when we come back for our meeting on Wednesday, and we're so glad to have Cindy Moody Smith here.
Yes, ma'am. Commissioner Black really wishes he could be here, believe it or not. And I have Robert Orange with me. He's our CFO, so hopefully we can answer any questions you guys may have today.
Okay. Oh, you got something for Sydney. Okay, one thing in the Consumer Protection Program where the governor added $724,000 for food safety inspections to fill 8 vacancies. Will you explain in detail your plans of how you're going to use this $724,000?
Yes, ma'am. And one request we have in place, too, is to change that language from food safety inspector to consumer protection inspectors.
Okay.
That way it gives us a little bit more leeway of who we can give any kind of pay raises to. But basically what we did is, to give you a little background, the commissioner had quite an aggressive request to OPB at the start of this budget season of $3.2 million. And so out of that, the governor graciously, like you said, is $724,000 there in the budget. And basically what we did is we went back and looked at everything again. And so we looked at all the inspectors, like I said, not just the food safety and meat, but also the plant and fuel and animal. Okay, so we're looking at 5 different types of inspectors. And with those funds there, we can actually come up with get the starting salaries to $28,000 for the food safety, meat, and the plant, and the starting salaries to $23,000 for fuel and the animal inspectors.
Representative Pig. Will mash your button, please, so I can.
I don't see any funding in here for the growing of medicinal cannabis anywhere.
No, sir.
Yeah, you offer that growing? I do appreciate the commissioner's willingness to chat about that conversation, and it's not something we're looking at in this year's budget, but if that legislation does get passed, which will be a small miracle if it does, but I'd like to make sure y'all continue to look at that maybe in the 16 budget. I know we're a ways away from that, but just kind of would love to make sure you're noodling about how you conceptually would do that too.
Yes, thank you. Any other questions? Go. Okay.
Having that one we dealing with some more money we was looking at there, Madam Chair, like $300,000.
So our ultimate goal is our long-term plan is for our inspectors and consumer protection for plant, fuel, and meat. Those inspectors, we require them to have a science background, science degree, And our long-term goal is for those inspectors to start at 35, and then on the bottom end, 29,000 is what our long-term plan is for fuel and animal, and that's because their requirements, we do not require them to have a degree. So long-term, we'd like to eventually be at 35 and 29. We run different scenarios at the department. One, I think you're talking about, Representative Roberts, is 30 on the top end and 26 on the bottom. Okay. But with the current money that we were given, we can do 26 and 23.
20. And what is the current pay for a food inspector or consumer protection inspector?
Yeah, the meat is around about 22,000.
And they have to have a 4-year degree.
Yes, ma'am.
How many people do y'all have that are full-time employees that's actually having to collect food stamps? Be a better question.
I don't have that number, but I do have the number that's at poverty level below, and it's 42.
42 of y'all's full-time employees.
Right.
That's making 23,000.
Right, a little less than 23. Right.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chairwoman.
And they have 4-year degrees.
Not all of those people, no, ma'am. We're just looking at it globally within the department.
Oh, okay.
At poverty level or below.
And what percentage?
It's 42 people.
42 people.
Yes, ma'am, out of 521.
Well, you can either, like we say, you can either pay them on the front end or the back end, either way.
Yes, ma'am.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Yes, Representative Clark.
So you said right now it's 22,000 is what you're paying for
right.
this increase?
Right.
And that's for those with science?
That's right. Yes, sir.
Are you filling those ranks?
Barely. We're still getting some people in.
We have a high rate of turnover.
Yes.
What is it?
About 25%. Yeah.
Take the job just to have something for the moment.
Right. Yeah. And a lot of them go to the federal government afterwards, after they get trained. Yes, sir.
What is that turnover, Madam Chairwoman?
Yeah.
What's that turnover rate?
It's 25%, I believe.
In meat.
In meat.
25.
For meat inspectors. For the different divisions, we may need to
right.
that number.
Okay.
Could you get us the turnover rates, please, for the different divisions?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Be glad to.
How much does, Madam Chair, is that all right?
Yes, go ahead.
How much does it cost us, more or less, to train one of these employees? I mean, because we're sitting here, we're training them to do the job, and then we're turning around and losing them. So I think looks like you probably got that.
I got it.
All right. You're better than the commissioner then.
Don't go quite that far. I can't find the photo. I had it in now.
Uh-oh, I spoke too soon.
Here it is.
Okay.
For the meat, I had 39,136 for the first year. And for food safety, it was actually 64,569.
And what it
food safety, 64,000.
And 64,500 to train them. And how much are they making?
Those around, I think those are 26,000. If I remember right.
Good gosh, almighty. Yeah, those are the ones inspecting cheddars. These kind of numbers would be great to have. I think the committee would probably really like to see these.
I think we'd like to see some of those figures.
Yes,
okay, maybe the commissioner's coming back on Wednesday. If you could have some hard figures for us by Wednesday, we would appreciate it.
Glad to, yes, ma'am.
And thank y'all so much for coming, and we will tell the commissioner what a good job y'all did representing him. Any other questions? Thank you, and thank you for coming. Does anybody on the committee have anything they'd like to say? We're through. If you have nothing else to say, I will see y'all again on Wednesday at 9 o'clock from 9 to 10. Thank you.